Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope you're all keeping well in the world right now.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here. Hope everybody is splendid.
Splendid, warm and well nourished. Hello everyone.
And we are joined with a fourth this week. We have got Mr. Thomas Kearney. Tom, welcome aboard. It's nice to have you on the good ship Cage Fighting.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, we've got to ask you a few questions before we go any further, as per the rules. So, what is your favourite Nick Cage film or performance?
Favourite for me, it's got to be Face Off, which I think other people have said before, and it's probably like a go-to, but for me, it just, quite a lot like the films that I'll talk about in this, it just sums up a time of me being a teenager, Face Off being kind of the first time I experienced the Nicolas Cage experience. And it's the film that just comes to mind as soon as I hear his name. And yeah, I loved that teenage me, loved that film without any hint of irony or knowing just what Nicolas Cage is. I just thought it was so clever and so advanced of its time. It was such a great action film. I just thought it was brilliant, and I watched it so many times over and over. And it's one of those that I kind of don't want to watch it again now because I like keeping that as my opinion of it.
It will stay the same. It'll stay exactly the same because, it did for me in the less thought-provoking of the three of us. And I was the same because, I mean, that and Con Air was the other way where that was disappointing from what I remember. But Face Off's like an eternal film. So they never change.
So when you go to the cinema, what is your snack of choice? Is it sweet, salty popcorn, no popcorn, chocolate? Where do you go?
This is one I had to really kind of put some thought into. I think what best sums it up would probably be get the fuck out of my face with your fucking food. Jesus fucking Christ, it's a cinema, not a goddamn restaurant. I hate it. I hate food in the cinema. I cannot stand it. Basically, I have problems hearing people eat. It just drives me up the wall. In my job, I was seconded to a client's in-house team, and the head of the service used to sit opposite me and used to be a proper lip smacker. And I used to just be there, just boiling over, like swearing I was going to turn my mouse into dust any second, just holding all the rage in. I used to have to go for a walk, and it was on an industrial estate. I had to go for a walk around an industrial estate just to give myself a break. So that kind of, sets the context. And then the last time I went to like when I go to the cinema, I tend to go to Lighthouse in Wolverhampton, or go to the Electric in Birmingham. And the last time I went to like a proper chain cinema was one that's on New Street in Birmingham, and went to see Spider-Man Far From Home. And I was already pretty pissed off because they didn't turn the lights down enough. So the immersion was kind of already halfway gone. And then there were just people just constantly grazing throughout the whole thing and lip smacking. And I just thought, for Christ's sake, like, did you not eat before you came? Like, do you have to constantly graze to survive? Like, you're sitting in a seat watching a film for 2 hours. Can you not just have a window where you're not stuffing your face? And just the whole, that experience, after being used to kind of the nice, independent experiences at the Lighthouse and the Electric. Even though I know the Electric you can order food in, but the novelty kind of gives it a pass. Even though that still gets annoying when you're getting really into a film and some knobhead's got some chicken wings coming through a crucial scene. It's like nothing like some like poignant moment with a tense pause and some member of staff's kind of hunched over, just going, "Gin and tonic." Fuck off.
We'll have to cancel our sponsorship with Butterkist.
It's perfect. That is the correct answer. Well done.
Thank you.
And finally, if you're only allowed to watch one film for the rest of your life, what film are you watching?
Yeah, this is a horrible question. And I've gone for one where, rather than it being my favourite film, it's one that I would grow least tired of if I was watching it over and over again. And that's Yesterday.
Okay.
Which I think it's got a soft spot in my heart as a failed musician. That I think every musician at some point probably had the fantasy, oh, what if I could just have all of the fame, all of the credit, all of the prestige without actually being any good, which is the predicament I found myself in real life. And just that, I think it probably sums up the whimsical nature of little escapism films like that I was stuck between either this or Midnight in Paris.
Ooh.
As two just very, very lovely, kind of fantastical, but still grounded with kind of human needs and dreams.
Mm.
And yeah, it just touches so many bases for me personally that I could watch it over and over again. The only frustrating thing is just in what world does Hamish Patel not go for that lady Daisy? She's the love interest in Baby Driver as well, and is now in lots of Sky adverts.
Lily James.
That's the one. I
Is
knew
it
it was
James?
definitely a name.
It's either Lily James or Lily Collins. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah,
I think it might be Lily James.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, I did. I know you'd appreciate this, Andy. I almost went for Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Great choice. Yeah.
Because I just quote it all the time. And one of my favourite quotes that I always say, and I feel like no one gets it, is the scene from The Vegan Police. And whenever I'm in the kitchen and we're talking about, like, you know, getting the Asda shopping or anything, I just always go, "That's milk and eggs, bitch." And I feel like you're one of the few people that would have a little chortle whenever I say that. Unfortunately, that's not my wife, who doesn't find me funny.
Was Lily James correct?
Yeah. One of my favourite quotes from that is, "You were vegan, you will now be gone." Like, having getting to see it a couple of weeks back on the big screen again after a decade was fantastic. It's still a brilliant film. Like, it's just it's perfect for me. That one is, love it.
I think what you said on Knives Chow in the top 5 kind of female protagonist pod was brilliant, and it's something I never really thought of before. But yeah, it just seems so obvious. You got these people who have massive downsides to them and just seem fundamentally quite selfish, and then you've got this one person who kind of triumphs over getting caught in the middle of all of that to just benefit for herself.
Yeah, she's the one good person out of everyone, I think. Right. So, Tom, we've got you here for the Top 5s episode because Matt has been singing your praises when it comes to being the go-to guy when it comes to all things action. So, you're a big fan of Kung Fu and ass-kicking. Where did this love of the genre come from?
I think, for me, I mean, linked with the fact that just martial arts was just always a big part of my life. I was a horrifically weedy, asthmatic Harry Potter looking kid, and when you suffer from those afflictions, conflict just seems to arrive at your door. So I started and with me not doing any of the sport because I had Swiss cheese for lungs, my first kind of experience of being good at a sport was when my dad took me down to like the local kickboxing club, and just kind of stemmed from there. And it's just been something from the age of 11, 12 has just been with me ever since, and is now just kind of part of who I am. And yeah, I just went all in. I would have, in another life, in another alternate reality, I would be one of those oddballs with a shaved head at the Shaolin Temple doing one finger presses. That would have been me. And honestly, if you'd have seen my kind of Googling when I was a teenager, it all would have been, how do I become a Shaolin monk? How much does it cost to go live in Thailand and train for years over there? But then I discovered the sesh and got on boozing instead. never really turned into much beyond just being an avid hobbyist and the odd amateur tournament here and there. But yeah, just for me, martial arts films, they're kind of the predecessor for me to Marvel before they to superhero films before Marvel really nailed the formula. Because it was just always about someone standing up for what's right, someone who is downtrodden, learning some kind of ability to fight for themselves, fight for those around them, fight for what's right. And that's what really got me hooked. and it's probably why I also just absolutely love kind of the superhero genre as well. So it started off, my dad referring me to someone called Bruce Lee, and that igniting the initial interest, and then you had kind of the lineage of Bruce Lee, then Jackie Chan taking over from that, and then in my late teens, it was very much all about Jet Li, and then Tony Jaa, and then I think modern day, unless I'm probably out of touch because I'm an old man now with creaky knees, but I think after Tony Jaa his career took a bit of a weird turn, and he kind of went off the rails a little bit, and there doesn't seem to have been a current kind of successor that's impacted kind of Western cinema since that.
So is Tony Jaa in Fast 9?
I'm the worst person to ask for that.
You know the in the silly truck.
Yeah,
is that he when he's
oh, has he got like bright blonde hair?
It's not Fast 9. It's one of the. It's
he was
7 or
in
8.
a film with Michael Bisping at some point.
Because I've watched all of them recently. They've all kind of blended into one. I don't know which one he was in.
My condolences.
He's in XXX, Return of Xander Cage, and Fast 7, and Jiu-Jitsu as well, which I had completely forgot about.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's running across the top.
I'd completely forgot about that. Oh, Christ. Have you seen Jiu-Jitsu, Tom?
I've not yet. I've got as someone who actually did jiu-jitsu, I just found the title so annoying. I watched the trailer and I thought, hang on, this looks like a really fun, like, take away the inaccuracy of the title. And there's a film to blame for that, which is in my top 5. I thought that looks really fun. Then I listened to your podcast about it and I thought, I'll save myself some time there.
That's the public service we provide.
It is.
You see, for people. We're time savers as much as entertainers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, we're here to discuss our top 5 favourite fight scenes. There's only one rule. There are no rules. It can be from a TV show or film. It can be one-on-one, army versus army, man versus beast, man versus food, whatever you want, as long as there is some kind of animosity between the folks. It is all allowable. We'll go 5-1 and we'll throw in a few honourable mentions along the way. We'll go me, Stu, Matt, and then Tom. So to start it off, I'm going to go with a film called Oldboy from 2003. It is the original. As much as I love Spike Lee, I never gave the remake any time of day because I heard it was offensively bad. The scene in Oldboy that is in my list is the scene in which, if you've seen Daredevil season 1, there is this scene where they hide these cuts in it and it looks like it's just one drawn out fight scene as he's walking down a corridor. And you can tell that this has been taken from Oldboy. So in the Oldboy film, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I might not be 100% accurate on the part it comes in. Daisy was on his way to finding the prison in which he has been held captive throughout the start of the movie. As he's about to escape, he's at the start of a corridor and there is what can only be described as a sea of humanity in front of him, all ready to kill him. And all he's got is a knife and a hammer. He somehow manages to lose the knife pretty quickly and he's just battling his way through all these people with this hammer. Each punch that lands, it has an impact. It's not just a case of it hits, they fall, and then they're straight back up at it. You feel the impact. It actually looks real, which I often find with a lot of films, especially from Japan, Korea, and the Far East. The impact is somehow lost. They don't sell the manoeuvre quite as much. But in this, I feel like it really does. Coupled with the fact that it is a scrolling left to right scene. And so it kind of reminds me of Streets of Rage, like an old school Nintendo 2D game. It looks fantastic how it's done. I just think it's such a great fight scene. So that's my number 5. Stu, what's yours?
Well, because there was a bit like Tom, my love is in nonsense. So there was
Nonsing. Is that?
not the nonsense that I still can't believe they got Phil Collins to wear that shirt. It's absolutely incredible, Wally. Yeah, I went for things that just came straight to mind because I had a list of about 25 to start with, and I thought this is unworkable. So in the end, I just went for things that stuck in my mind the first time I saw them, and we've got to brush over this because my number 5 is They Live. So we'll come back to that later.
Matt, you're up next.
So I need to precurse this as I do every top 5 by saying this isn't what I think is the best in the world. It's my purely because you're going to scoff massively at my number 5 now, and it is the terrorist battle and the destruction of Paris in Team America: World Police. now, the reason I have this in my list is because at the time of watching, I was stunned at what puppetry work they actually could do in this movie. I thought it was tremendous. Mix them with the comedy elements and then the downright crass and offensive humour of the writers. It just made for a really fantastic scene. Like, you've got that little kid that's walking around singing Frere Jacques, and then like he sees this Middle Eastern terrorist that's just got a bit of like lint as a beard, and then like and it's just hilarious, and the wanton destruction of it all. And then it has like a fight, like a kung fu fight scene, and it looks really good at first, but then they're just bashed against each other, the puppets. It's like it starts off like they're in a pose, but then they're just bashed together, like they're flailing their arms, and it makes me laugh every time. I'm not naive enough to think that I can have that anywhere near the top spot, but it does mean it makes me laugh when I see it, and that means something. Andy, you've gone.
I was trying to mute my dog. Excellent choice. I think like comedy has its place in action, so like I've got 1 or 2 comedy ones in mine as well, so I think that's a fantastic choice. Tom, what's your number 5?
Well, I've just gone for pure glorious violence for pretty much all of mine. I was tempted to. I think a lot of my choices. I think if you're into martial arts films, they're all pretty basic bitch kind of choices.
Mm.
But if you're not, they might be a bit obscure. But originally, I was tempted to go even more obscure and go for like some classic Golden Harvest kind of prime Hong Kong kung fu wire work type films. Like I love Once Upon a Time in China, where just some of the stuff that Jet Li does is phenomenal. It's not just about the fighting, but just the way it's set up and the choreography of it is just absolutely gorgeous. And it's just a shame that all of that work is contained in what are fundamentally like pretty shit films. Because I loved them. There was a time when I loved them, but recently in the first lockdown, I think it was, I went back and I watched Once Upon a China again, and I just thought, this is so hard to follow. It's all over the place. Like the fight sequences are great, but it's just crap. Everything else, the editing's just awful. But I don't know if a lot of the time that's to do with international releases and whoever's been outsourced for the dubbing and things like that. But it's dodgy. Yeah, for going a slightly opposite direction, and my choice for number 5 is the dojo scene in The Matrix, which for me that was kind of my first exposure to martial arts in a proper film. This wasn't in the niche corner section of video action. This was some proper martial arts with proper choreography in a proper film that everyone knew, and that was great. I think it probably, in my opinion, had the biggest impact on interest in martial arts in kind of the more modern era. Probably biggest impact since the famous success of Bruce Lee in the 70s. I think that all props to Jackie Chan. I think even though he kind of took over from Bruce Lee in that role, he was probably more known for the stunt side of things. And I don't think the interest in Jackie Chan made people go sign up to their local whatever martial arts school. It just inspired people to like jump out of a tree, which is all good fun as well, but just wasn't quite the same. So that I feel that was probably a really big moment for just generating interest in martial arts in kind of the Western world, and got to it's probably a sin that this is the only film that I've got in here where the choreographer's Yen Wu Ping, who is just an absolute legend of choreography. In fact, it's the Wachowski brothers who approached him to do the choreography for The Matrix. He initially turned it down, refused to do it. They came back, so he just quoted an astronomical fee. And they were like, "Yeah, we'll pay that." Like, what else can it do? So he came back and said, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it, but along with my fee, I want complete control over all the fight scenes, and I want to train all the actors for about 4 months before we start shooting." Yeah, deal. Oh shit, better do it then. I think having complete control over a fight scene, I mean, to put into perspective, I think Jackie Chan has said that during the filming of Rush Hour, he was in a constant battle on how to shoot fight scenes with the crews on set. Because you've got the kind of Western style of when you're trying to make actors who aren't martial artists look like they can fight. You've got a lot of choppy editing and quick cuts away, and they're horrible to watch, in my point of view, because you don't actually see what's happening. You just see flaming limbs. So, yeah, on a film as big as that, for someone to be given complete and utter control over all the fight scenes, just goes to speak how much of a legend he is. Even though the fight scene itself, I think that there are better fight scenes in the other Matrix films. I think The Matrix Reloaded has better fight scenes, but just for the impact that initial scene had and how it just kind of blew up interest, that's got to be in the top 5 for me. Even though, as I referred to earlier with the Jiu-Jitsu film, it is responsible single-handedly for one of the biggest mislabelings of martial arts ever. There's that scene, isn't there, where he wakes up from having the program downloaded into him and he just goes, "I know Jiu-Jitsu." And then it cuts away to this dojo fight scene where they do no grappling whatsoever. It's responsible for everything. Jiu-Jitsu, that kung fu stuff. But, nah.
Yeah, with the Matrix, that was one of me, because I presume that Andy would think that I'd say that anyway, so I deliberately didn't put it in. But you've got the lobby scene as well, and you've got the scene, the original bullet time scene on the roof as well. And what you said about the people jumping out of trees, I don't think I've mentioned this on here, but after I saw the first, it's not that bad. After I saw the original one, we used to walk through the hospital coming out of Cineworld. So you walk across the road, and you're at the wall, and so I looked at it. I thought, shall I? And I tried to run up it straight away. But again, it was what? How old would I have been then?
Too old to try and run up a wall.
15, 16 at the time. So acceptable. But yeah.
People probably just thought you were shoplifting from Bentley Bridge.
With my bleached blonde hair as well. So excellent sight.
After such an eloquent defence of the Matrix, I almost feel embarrassed to say my next one. I've gone much more with the Matt sort of route, and I've gone for something that's a bit more comedic, that has the impact rather than actual proper fighting. So I've gone for the jukebox barroom brawl from Shaun of the Dead. Mm-hmm. So I had a few, like at one point my list was just full of Edgar Wright films, and I thought, no, I need to try and whittle it down a little bit. So it came down to either this scene or one from Scott Pilgrim, because I actually think Scott Pilgrim stuff's got quite a lot of impact in those fight scenes. They look great and you are invested. But I think the use of music, Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, the choreography between that and the actual violence that is taking place on screen is so well measured. It's just so perfect. And I think anyone who is new to Edgar Wright, if you see that scene, it will tell you pretty much all you need to know about Edgar Wright as a director, that he's both visually and aurally, I think is the term. He knows how to marry the two up to damn near perfection. And obviously that has had quite an impact in pop culture outside of that genre and the work of Edgar Wright alone. So for me, I think that's great. It's one of the best scenes in one of my all-time favourite films. So that's my number 4. Stu?
I think it's a film that's had a lot of mentions over the last year on here, and Inception, the final act where they're three deep. I've put the hotel scene, but you know what I mean, with the spinning hotel corridor, then interspersed with the fight in the snow, and just amazing how you even think of something like that is one thing, but then putting it together and pulling it off as a practical effect as well. It was just, again, one of them moments where it was just like jaw drop, like how the fuck has this happened? And even when I watched it last year before the excellent Tenet, of course, in preparation for that film, and even though it had been a few years, I watched it again, and it was like watching it for the first time, and it was just awesome. It's just awesome. Awestruck. You can't really describe it either because it doesn't make any sense if you're trying to explain it. And probably don't make sense if you watch it either to some people. But I think just because of how outlandish and ridiculous it sounds on paper, to manage to actually film it and then splice it together as they did, just incredible.
Absolutely outstanding scene. Tom, Inception. I'm not Inception. Sorry, Tenet. Are you Team Matt or Team me and Stu?
You know what? I've not actually seen it yet.
Okay. We'll
So you're with us then, yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
It's one of those where I feel like the moment's gone in a way. I feel like if I hadn't seen it in the brief time when you could in the cinema, then I don't know if I'm going to really have the impact of it. And yeah, and to be honest, at the moment, with a young baby, most films I watch at the moment are in kind of 10-minute installments, so I don't think I'll be able to give it fair judgment anytime soon.
That's
it's a small mercy for you, Tom, because everybody said this. Everybody, not just me, has said this. In the cinema, whatever mix they've done on the audio, it was just so loud. It was literally, it was incredible. Like my ears were ringing for hours afterwards when I come out of the cinema to see Tenet. I don't know whether that was intentional or Cineworld just have their levels mixed up. But Christ, it was deafening, wasn't it?
Would you say that you had a tinnitus?
Yes, yes, I did. Cut the tape. We're getting better than that.
Incredible. Matt, you're up to the block next.
Yes, so I had, and I didn't think I'd have a clash on this one out of all of my list, but They Live. Stu, was it the alley scene from They Live? From you,
Yes,
did you?
The
5-minute
alley scene.
So basically, this is an example, and there's other examples of this in my list, but kind of where what starts, I wouldn't say friendly kerfuffle, but it starts, but just gets more and more visceral as it goes on and gets more and more angry and more violent and nasty as it goes on. And for a professional wrestler doing a sci-fi sort of actiony film, you don't expect it to feel quite as real as it does. I know that's kind of a contradiction because wrestling is meant to look real, but it feels real. It feels really brutal and nasty. But they also, it gives me personal enjoyment, throw in like legitimate wrestling moves, like there's a back body drop and a gut wrench suplex in there. And it's just a really well thought out, violent brawl between two people that they almost banter with each other throughout it, even though they're trying to kick the fuck out of each other. And it's just a really excellent fight scene. Stu, what did you think of it?
And it's the fact that they did it themselves and not use their stunt doubles. And that it was only supposed to be a few, like 30 seconds, and they just let them carry on because they were having so much fun. I mean, I haven't seen it for probably best part of 20 years, 25 years, something like that. And I only watched it on the back of, remember the WWF cartoon?
Yeah.
And obviously Roddy Piper in there. And I thought, oh, he's in this film. John Carpenter, I'll give that a go. And that's literally why I watched it all them years ago, and obviously having no clue what it was really about. But it's you completely believe that they want to kill each other, and that it's almost like, is this going too far? And they've just carried on filming because obviously it's late 80s, early 90s, something like that. It just feels real. it's another one of them. I haven't seen it for so long, but now thinking about it, I really need to go and watch it again because it's. I mean, and it's probably. Remember that? Was it the Social Dilemma? That kind of pseudo documentary drama thing on Netflix last year. It's got a few things in this. I mean, it's about some special glasses, which is all bollocks anyway. But it's how you can kind of. I mean, the whole film's like how the world is controlled and everything, and it's been made when it was. It's kind of relevant now, which is quite scary. So it's probably scarier now than it was back then. But yeah, if nothing else, I mean, you could probably just find the fight scene on YouTube and save yourself the trouble. But I would go and watch this film again, definitely.
Yeah, I watched this film last night. It was originally in my honourable mentions. I watched the fight scene again last night, and it's the bit where I can't remember the character's name, but the one guy is on top of Roddy Piper, and he's kneeing him repeatedly in the bollocks. And it's so visceral, and like it gave me stomachache just watching it. Like it's so hard hitting. And of course, then it was parodied on South Park in the episode Cripple Fight between Jimmy and Timmy. So again, it's another fight scene that has had quite a life beyond that scene itself. So I think that's a really good choice. So next up is back to you, please, Tom.
Yeah, for this, I was a bit conflicted with this one. This was essentially I've tried to do one per martial arts icon, and this was my Tony Jaa choice. This one, I've gone for. It was between one that I think is, to be honest, the better fight scene in the better action film. It's against one that has a bit more of a novelty value in just how it was made. So I've gone for the staircase fight scene in Tom Yum Goong, also known as the Protector. If you Google Tom Yum Goong, that is the name for spicy shrimp soup. So you'll probably just get some recipes. And essentially, the reason why I picked this is similar to your reasoning behind the shooting of the old boy scene, Andy. This is, if not the longest, it is one of the longest single shot continuous fight scenes. Essentially, I mean, the film itself, again, as a teen, I loved it. Looking back, bit crap. To boil it down, man has elephant stolen. Man goes to get elephant. That's kind of it. So he finds out where the baddies are and where the elephant is. Which, thinking about it, yeah, an elephant in a multi-story building. I'm not even going to think about the logistics behind that. But he starts at the bottom, massive staircase, and for one continuous 4-minute shot, he has a fight scene against multiple enemies, multiple props, multiple stunts in one go until he gets to the top. I mean, strictly speaking, looking at the fight scene on face value, it's not the most complex. But what I really like is that because it's all done in one take, Tony Jaa, by the end of it, is a bit sloppy and is a bit knackered, which is, I would be that if I was just climbing those stairs. I just really liked that realistic aspect of it, just dropped in there. But I do have to say that, yeah, the better fight scene is probably the Fight Club fight scene in his other film, and probably his more well-known breakout film, Ong Bak, which is just brilliant. It's just a case of just the trope of quiet man with strong principles having to just show people some business. And I just absolutely love it. It starts off with this big brash Aussie guy, he's absolutely huge, absolutely ripped, and he's beating the shit out of people. He starts molesting one of the waitresses at this bar, at this kind of fight club / bar, and then it all escalates. Then he kind of steps in. He's about half the size of the guy, and the guy's getting ready, getting pumped up, getting in his face. He goes to run in, and he just throws his entire body behind this front kick straight to the guy's face, and he just smashes down. And it's again that kind of that visceral realism in a fight scene. That it's crazy that I can't remember when it's made, but in the noughties, People have been filming fights with, on the most part, 2 arms, 2 legs, throwing punches, throwing kicks. How could you do it new? How could you do it in a different way? But somehow, with how he did it, with this kind of traditional Muay Thai and Mai Baran influence, he just seemed to put it all together in a new way that was just so appealing and so fresh. That Fight Club scene, as a fight scene, without all of the kind of novelty of how the staircase scene in Tom Yum Goong was shot, that is the better fight scene. And it's got one of my favourite martial arts film tropes, which is the escalation of the opponents and the styles. So you've got the big guy, he beats him, then another guy steps in and he's like a fast, kicky guy who's really annoying, beats him, and then it escalates up until essentially this one guy who's just a nutter starts like trying to set people on fire. And it's just, it brought together so many tropes in martial arts films that's so indulgent in a new, fresh way. In fact, fuck it, yeah. Number 4's on back, the Fight Club scene, and staircase. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to just relegate it to honourable mention in my Tony Jaa chapter.
I like how you talked yourself out of it there. That's brilliant.
Live editing, that's never happened before.
Yeah, tremendous. So my number 3, and I think this might surprise Stu and Matt. I'm going for the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, that does surprise me.
I mean, obviously, I'm not a huge Tom Hanks fan, but I do think this is like one of his better films. I think it's a really, really good movie. But I just love the opening where you've got these men on the boat as he's approaching the beach. Like they're throwing up because of the nerves and the seasickness that they must be feeling as bullets and bombs are going off all around them. Like that, you see them just as about to leave. They kiss their crosses for good luck as they're about to go on the beach. And as soon as it's not a door, is it? But as soon as it's open for them to go and hit the beach, they're just getting absolutely massacred. Bodies falling indiscriminately throughout this scene. The shooting of this scene is so tightly shot. It's so aggressive. Like, you just don't know where to look because as soon as you see one thing, it's editing, it's cutting to the next. I'm not usually a massive fan of, like you'd mentioned before, Tom, like where it just goes edit, edit, edit. I don't like that, generally speaking. But I feel in this scene it worked perfectly because there is so much going on with so many different little stories here, there and everywhere. And you've lost the hero in all this. You don't know where Tom Hanks is until partway through the 10-minute sequence. It's so discombobulating. You don't know what's happening. You genuinely fear because absolutely anybody and everybody could die. And you just wouldn't know. I mean, putting it in a fight list might not be the right one because it was almost a genocide that was going on here. It wasn't so much a fight as it was just flat out murdering a group of people as they approached a beach. But I think it's one of the best shot scenes that I've ever seen. And to open a movie that way, it's like balls of steel to pull something off like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember that was the film that I used to like test my surround sound out for the first time.
Yeah.
Because it was just like the sound work, the audio work was so phenomenal in it. It was literally like vroom, vroom, like coming left, right. That it was just sensational. And you're right, it's used as the benchmark for anything Omaha Beach related. It is the benchmark that everything will always be compared to. And they did a tremendous job with it. And that movie, unfortunately, never recovers for me past the opening 10 minutes. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, really, because it starts off so amazingly well. But how do you top that up? It's like, I don't know, Iron Maiden starting their set list with Run to the Hills. Do you know what I mean? Or Metallica starting with Enter Sandman. It's just like you just don't know where to go from there, dear. But yeah, a great choice that is.
I was going to say it's a bit like watching Paul and Shooting You Loud and then having to watch Love Actually later on. But yeah, I never even considered that scene, to be fair. Obviously, because it's so one-sided, like you said, Andy. I'm still amazed that you even like a war film. It's kind of you are changing. I mean, I know I'm turning to you when buying skinny jeans and stuff, which is terrifying. But yeah,
Would you say that with the opening 5-10 minutes being something that the rest of the film finds hard to live up to, would you say it's almost Snyder-esque?
That is a very, very good question. You are right. Snyder does have this. He knows how to put together a beautiful montage to start a film that
Almost
gets
like a
you
music
really
video.
excited. Yeah, it's like a music video. Gets you excited, and then the rest of it just sort of farts along a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah, that's a good comparison. Stu, you're up next, please.
It's inevitable. Duel of the Fates, Star Wars Episode 1, Darth Maul, sliced down. Superb. And it obviously there was the redemption in bringing him back in the Clone Wars and stuff, because it was, other than obviously Jar Jar, he was the best character in that film by a mile. And you just never saw it coming, and you never really expected Liam Neeson to be wielding a lightsaber like that. And for, like Tom's already said about training and stuff, Ray Park did a lot of the training for them, and just for him and Hugh McGregor, and it shows, because that whole, when they're in between the beam doors as well, just the tension of him just sitting there, just waiting to just slaughter them. And you think, oh no, this is going to go off. And obviously the score helps as well. And if you had Benny Hill in the background, it wouldn't be as good. But it does add a lot to it. And like we said in conversation earlier, this afternoon, that it is an iconic score now. Duel of the Fates, it's just an amazing piece of work. And I think that if that was in, it's kind of a theme now so far, that if this scene was in a better film, it'd be lauded forever.
Yeah,
but it's stuck with a film with fucking gun guns in, so it gets lambasted, and there's no reason why it should, because that 5-10 minutes is incredible.
This one scene is the only reason that Episode 1 is my favourite of the prequel trilogy. Because I think this scene, and I think I said to you earlier, Stu, the music in this scene is some of the best music in any film that's ever been made. Not just Star Wars, not just John Williams, any film ever. I think it is exceptional. And yeah, I think this elevates the whole film. It is that good. But I mean, it's taking it from a minus to like about a 2 out of 10. So it's not great still.
And without this, you're left with things like "Misa said no," and I mean, when that's a quote of a 2 and a bit film, that's just bollocks. And what hope have you got? A new hope, maybe. But, yeah, incredible.
It's one of those as well where, on the fight scene alone, it's brilliant, it's phenomenal. But then when you hear the likes of Dave Filoni going into the background of it and the overarching meaning of it and what it's for the future, and that it's essentially a battle for the future of Anakin and the consequences that it goes on to have, in that, Qui-Gon Jinn was going to be the father figure that he didn't have, that Obi-Wan Kenobi, referred to Anakin as like a useless life form when they first met, and he very reluctantly kind of took on more and as a debt to Qui-Gon Jinn than off his own back to train Anakin, and was more of like a begrudging older brother figure. That without that father figure, that's what led to Anakin not having quite the guidance that he needed and leading to his fall to the dark side. And I find that with the prequels, it was a case of good principle, awful execution, because in terms of lore, and I mean, that just shows on just how good the Clone Wars animated series is, using the same kind of world and the same kind of core stuff, but just making something so much better. It does kind of, forgive the prequels for me a little bit. Just that
Only
background.
A little. Matt, you next, please, sir.
So we're going all the way to Westeros for mine. The Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones. I don't know where to begin with this. this scene for me. I mean, we've got to talk the context of it. Film. It took 25 days to film this 7-minute scene. For anyone that's lived under a rock, essentially it's the battle of the two bastards, Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton, fighting for Winterfell, essentially, and it's just absolute carnage. And you know, if you've read the books or you've watched the show, you know that you cannot trust Game of Thrones to give you the outcome that you want, and you are going to have your heart broken at some point. And it very much felt like this was going to be the case. Towards the end of the scene, Jon Snow's drowning in bodies, and it looks like this is the end for our hero again. I'm not sure if it's again by this point. Yeah, he must have already died by this point.
Yeah.
And you think, well, this is this is the end, and the fight scene is so brutal and so violent and so intense. And I mean, when we were talking about Uncut Gems, one of the few times where like my heart has literally raced through my chest as I've been watching something, that happened in this scene, or this sequence. And it's important as well because this was like the coming out party for Sansa Stark as well, in many ways, that to prove that she isn't the bitch to be fucked with, so to speak. And it was just so intense, but inherently good triumphed over evil, which wasn't the mantra of Game of Thrones throughout a lot of it. But the scene itself is just a spectacular display of just what you can do with good direction and time. And unfortunately for the big screen, it meant that everybody else had to step up their game if they wanted to have any kind of like big battle scene, because it will never be, it's going to have to work really hard to beat the Battle of the Bastards. It's just tremendous. I mean, you can watch it on YouTube and it probably won't have the same effect if you don't enjoy the show, but you'll still feel just how brutal and violent it is and how wonderful it is.
Yeah, that the part where he is, as you say, drowning in the sea of humanity, when he can finally get his head above the people, like you're genuinely breathing a sigh of relief yourself. It does feel like it's the first time that you as the viewer is able to breathe. It really does drag you into the middle of the shit. It's so well done. It's probably the best shot sequence in any of Game of Thrones, I'd say. Yeah,
I'd agree.
So number 3 for you, please, Tom.
So for me, it's another one where, on the face of it, it's quite shit, but there's a lot of meaning and a lot of history behind it. And this is my Bruce Lee choice, and it's the kind of final pagoda sequence in Game of Death, which it's a bit of a cheat because I think in the intended final form, this scene doesn't strictly exist, or at least it didn't until very recently. Because the story is that Game of Death, essentially Bruce Lee had built up enough kind of reputation and power that he was able to kind of start to really put his own vision together of what he wanted to do in a film. And this is a film where he wanted to really put a lot of his own personal philosophies into it in terms of martial arts training, not picking one style or doing anything one way, treating everything as a whole, and not limiting yourself by just saying, I am this type of fighter, that type of style, whatever, just really being really expansive and inclusive with it to try and be as complete as possible, which is a philosophy I think you can carry on into a lot of things. But essentially, they recorded about half an hour's worth of footage, and the offer came in to go and make Enter the Dragon. So he went, made that, of course, died soon after, and Game of Death never really was finished. And it's a film. Don't watch it. Don't waste your time because it's awful. It's kind of it was latterly kind of cobbled together using edits, stand-ins, doubles, all sorts like dodgy CGI. And the way the production company handled it was awful. They even used footage from Bruce Lee's own funeral, from the news footage, in the film as a plot point, saying that the character had faked his death to try and then also explain away the shoddy kind of body doubles that they then used to try and finish the film. Anyone connected to Bruce Lee condemns this film and the way that the production company operated, to the point where Chuck Norris was, I think he was featured in the film slightly using some archive footage from Way of the Dragon. And even from that archive footage, he was given a credit, and he sued the production company because he didn't want a credit. Because he didn't want his name to this film.
Jesus.
And in its final form, the only place I've ever seen it as close to the original vision was in actually a documentary about Bruce Lee, where they'd tracked down all the footage and, as closely as possible, edited it all together. And the principle is that, I say, a very familiar theme of you're at the bottom, fight your way to the top. You know, it's similar to the staircase thing. The Raid did that magnificently. Dread, another version of that kind of principle. And it's just such a great instrument as a challenge in a film to just be like, right, you're here, get to the top. And just, see how you can make it through. And the essentially each floor of the pagoda is filled with a different expert in their respective field of martial arts. Yeah, you know, an expert kind of puncher, an expert kicker, an expert grappler, an expert with weapons, and then at the top, and Bruce Lee essentially showed how his philosophy of not being completely limited to one way showed that he could adapt to each style and make his way up. Funny thing is, the person at the top was supposed to resemble the most complete lethal enemy that he was going to face. And it's not a great fight scene, to be honest, because the person he chose to play that nemesis was one of Bruce Lee's famous students at the time, basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I think fair play, he clearly trained a lot, it was a big passion of his. But just logistically, having a bloody giant, some 7 foot odd tall, lanky dude, fight a 5'7" sort of that guy. It's just really herky jerky and awkward, just in terms of the space that's between them. And so it's a case of these within this entire sequence there are some great moments. Most notably, probably the nunchaku battle between Bruce Lee and one of his top pupils, Danny Masanto, which is really unique because you tended to get kind of in a lot of traditional martial arts films, you'd have the nunchucks, you'd have the one person using them against a crowd of people, against other people, but you very rarely saw some hot nunchuck on nunchuck action. But yeah, so it's one of those where the fight sequence, there are some great moments in it. Not on the face of it the best, but that kind of philosophy that was put across is why I think Bruce Lee gets a lot of credit in terms of the approach that a lot of people took when it came to cross-training in different fields, and that ultimately led to kind of mixed martial arts in the UFC. This principle of, well, let's become good at everything.
Excellent. Great choice. My choice, I've never really watched a great deal of Eastern style fighting movies. So I think the first one that I would have seen would have been this film, Kill Bill Volume 1, which I think was the one that introduced that style to a more mainstream audience. Obviously, Tarantino is very much a magpie when it comes to movie making. He takes a little bit of all the nice, pretty, shiny things and puts them into his movie. And the scene specifically that I absolutely love in this movie is where the bride fights the Crazy 88. I think that is an absolutely outstanding scene. It takes a little bit of that jukebox barroom brawl from Shaun of the Dead in them putting it to that specific soundtrack. The name of the band escapes me at the moment. But it is so well done. It adds this layer of intensity to the movie. Because it's almost like a Japanese style punk music, if I remember correctly, that's going on. It's this really fast riffs, and it just works wonderfully with the visuals. And then, of course, we get the girl from Battle Royale comes in, and that face-off between her and the bride. I don't know what that weapon is that she has, but I really want one. It looks fucking awesome. I'd really like to have a go with one of them. But yeah, I love that. I love the film. I love that scene. I just think the whole thing's outstanding. It's so well shot. And again, to the music, soundtrack, just perfect. Really well done.
The outfit worn by Uma Thurman in that film is a nod to the tracksuit that Bruce Lee wears in The Game of Death.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
iconic kind of yellow black stripe down the side. And the choreographer for the Kill Bill films was none other than the aforementioned Yen Wu Ping.
Oh, right. Okay. So they had like the top dog that they could have got to pull it all together.
Yeah.
And I think it shows, like you can tell that it's not just done by Tarantino. They have got proper people in there to do the job. Stu, your number 2, please.
Is this the oldest film on this list? And you've got the main thing of it all four, but I think it's got a pretty good chance. 1963.
Maybe one of Tom's, maybe older, just because I don't know those films as well, but possibly not.
And it is a fight scene in a train carriage in From Russia with Love, which, I mean, when you got a guy from Lancashire playing a Russian, that's enough. That's all you need anyway. But beating the shit out of each other with a briefcase and throwing each other into things, and absolute silence as well, no music in the whole scene. And maybe because it was a second Bond film, they had no money, I don't know. But it's just one of them things. I remember I probably watched it with my granddad, obviously very long time ago, as one of the first proper films to watch with him, other than things like Thief of Baghdad and stuff like that that he was obsessed with. But as a first proper film, it was always stuck with me. Obviously, you got Rose of Klebb and the Silly Shoe and all that kind of thing, but that fight scene in the train car. I mean, I hadn't seen a train like that kind of old 50s, 60s style where you got individual compartments. I'd never seen one of them until a few years ago. So it was when I was in a railway museum up north, and it was one of them things. It was really weird being in one. Finally, thinking, oh yeah, it's not just a prop. These are things actually existed in the 60s, and obviously in Heartbeat. But just seeing how small they are, them compartments, and the fact that they managed to get an incredible fight scene out of such a small space, just blew my mind.
Is this a Connery Bond?
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm not great with Bond. Okay. I don't know the specific fight scene, but like the idea of fighting in one of those tiny little, is it like the sleeper compartments they have within them? Yeah. Like you said, they are tiny. You've just got leg room with whoever sat opposite you. So that must have been a hell of a feat of production to try and get something out of that. That's quite amazing. Next up then is Matt, please.
So, quite predictably, as I think I mentioned this maybe on an average of every 2.5 podcasts, but the church scene from Kingsman Secret Service. Now, as great as the scene is, the choreography, the fact that it doesn't rely on too many cuts away to Samuel L. Jackson and Egerton to like break it up. What really makes this scene is the choice of using Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd as the music, because the whole solo of Freebird is like an escalating guitar fight in itself, really, that builds and builds and builds and builds and just goes on and on and on, and it increases in its intensity. And then the action itself, I mean, what fight scenes for me, because I don't have a technical bone in my body when it comes to, you know, fighting or anything like that, what I really enjoy seeing is the brutality and the tribal kind of nature of human beings when they're fighting, i.e., you know, when it's really, there's no technique there, it's just pure adrenaline and aggression. And this is exactly what this is. This is when whatever technology you use just ramps up the aggression of people. And it's exactly this, like the way that they have the creative ways of killing people in this space is just incredible. There's everything from kind of using like the church pews to he breaks like not a dustpan and brush, what am I talking about? Like a broom in half. They're using the organ. He's got like his fancy lighter, a taser, guns, fists. It's just incredible. And then it's like whenever you're watching any kind of video, like a reaction video of a mass crowd, you cannot watch Harry in this scene. You could watch any of the other people in the background, and they're all doing something incredible. It's not just a one-man show either. The whole production is incredible, and it's just a real like I should feel guilty about feeling so pumped up about watching this mindless violence action, but that's exactly what it's there to do. That's what the people in this scene are doing. They're out of their mind with adrenaline and aggression, and you almost feel that as the viewer. And I think it's really, really good how they do that.
It's definitely one of the most fun fight sequences I think I've ever seen. Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the use of music is just incredible in this one. Tom, your number 2, please.
So my number 2 hasn't quite got the history and novelty as some of my previous picks. I thought this was my official Jet Li choice. And I was going to go with Fist of Legend, which is a Yen Wu-ping choreographed film. It's like essentially I was going to say modern, but I think it was made in '94. A more modern take on the kind of story in Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. There's a lot of awkward anti-Japanese narrative with it being set during the time of Japanese occupation and kind of Chinese rebellion against that, and it's essentially Jet Li rocks up to a Japanese karate school and beats the ever loving shit out of everyone, and it's brilliant. But as I was looking at this and I started having a look through kind of Jet Li's various films, a more modern film that I used to absolutely love and just had completely forgotten about was there. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, shit, yeah, fuck that. I'm going to have the twins fight scene from Kiss of the Dragon. Which, Kiss the Dragon, I think, isn't too bad a film, to be honest. It's got some, it's good. It's got Bridget Nielsen in it, and the guy who plays Baptiste. So, and the chap who played Kato in Pink Panther. So, it's an all-star cast. They're no clowns. And essentially, this is there's nothing really too profound about it. It's just fucking badass. You've got these twins, are like the head henchmen. I don't think they've got a single line in the entire film. They've both got bleach blonde hair, kind of bomber Harrington jackets, matching cargo trousers, and they're just, to teenage me, they look the absolute dons. They look like absolute savages. And the build-up of the film is essentially, Jet Li, this quiet Chinese special forces operative, kind of sent to Paris to get to the bottom of something or other. And it's the main fight. There's two of them. These twins. But you've got the main guy who's played by Sir Raffaele, and then another guy who's just a big lump. And Sir Raffaele is like doing all these crazy acrobatics. He's really, really impressive to watch. He was in a French film with one of the founders of parkour called District 13, and some of the action sequences in that with the parkour and the martial arts are phenomenal. And it's great just to watch the film is just a culmination of this kind of quiet man feeling the need to step in, and with everyone kind of overlooking him as this kind of fairly introverted little guy, he just goes on to just tear holes in everyone. It's just one of those where it's taking something as basic as filming a fight in an abandoned office, and the way that they do it and the music that they put to it is just phenomenal to watch. And I just love a good style mix-up.
Excellent.
I was almost convinced that he was going to say Jet Li's the one at that point. At one point there,
God, I watched that recently. Jesus Christ! I think you might have noticed that. I think a few weeks ago I asked a question to the pod saying, "What films do you wish you never went back and watched?"
Yeah,
and so many of them are martial arts films for me because
it's got everything. I mean, it's got Jet Li and the Staith in the same film. So. I watched that in the cinema as well, day one, and I couldn't believe it. It was amazing, but again, I've never seen it since.
It's Jason Statham with hair though, so he's not quite got his mythical status of
Well, that's
modern
weird.
day Statham.
Have you ever seen Unleashed with Jet Li?
Yeah,
I quite enjoyed that. Like, I didn't expect a lot of it, but it ended up being a bit of an enjoyable story. I think there was more to it than what met the eye.
yeah. I think it was a lot more than just an action flick. There was a real human side to it, with kind of him discovering how to kind of adapt to a normal society, and as he learned to do that, not wanting to fight anymore, and yeah, having that kind of adoptive father figure with Morgan Freeman, and having his daughter kind of bring him out of his shell. And then you've got Bob Hoskins playing the absolute big baddie, nasty piece of work. And it's one of those films where the audio is as captivating as the visuals on the fight scenes, because it's another just really uncomfortably realistic sound when you hear the impact of punches landing on skin and bone.
So we'll have a few honourable mentions before we give our number one, I think. So I've got an honourable mention. I didn't quite know where to fit this one in, but it's the Evil Dead film and TV series. I couldn't get one specific scene out of this, because I think there are so many excellent, funny, fun, disgusting, and disturbing moments in this. Like where he fights his own hand, like it's sort of brilliant. But then in the TV series, there's some real harrowing moments in some of the fight scenes, and I'm kind of amazed that the TV show has gone a bit under the radar. So even fans of the Evil Dead trilogy don't especially know about the TV series. And it's a great shame, because that was 3 really good seasons, and it does have a proper ending. So it's well worth your time if you ever get a chance to visit that world again. And I've got 2 other honourable mentions, which are from the comic book world. So Superman versus Doomsday. This was such an iconic fight. It was the death of Superman. And it's also the comic that broke death. Like, the door to death is now a 2-way thing. You don't necessarily stay dead. But this fight eventually led on to the Black Lanterns versus the White Lanterns in the Blackest Night series, which is one of my all-time top 5 favourite graphic novels. It is incredible. And it's basically the Black Lanterns are all of the former superheroes who have passed away, and the White Lanterns are the superheroes who died and then have come back to life. And it's like the midway point in one of the most incredible story arcs of any comic book series. Jeff Johns did a 10-year run on Green Lantern, and this was 5 years in, and it spent 5 years building up to the War of Lights, and it was just astounding. Like I think there was about 100 and something books to the whole thing in the end, but it was just beautiful. Like, it brought a tear to the eye. It was so well written, and the actual artwork in it was superb. I think it was Ethan Van Sciver, if I remember correctly. Stu, have you got any honourable mentions?
A lot of them have already been mentioned. Obviously, I said The Matrix anyway. You said you mentioned Daredevil for, obviously, the one-shot scene, which was, I mean, going back at the time, when if you hadn't watched it day one, it was automatically ruined for you straight away, because it was all anyone was talking about for the whole of the next week. Obviously, Jet Li's the one, and then Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Just, I think mainly, like you said about Kill Bill, I hadn't really watched any martial arts film with a lot of wire working. And then everyone was raving about this thing called Crouching Tiger. I thought, I don't care about this. And it was another one of them. It was just, you can't really pick one certain scene out there, because it's all much of a muchness to my untrained eye. But yeah, more than enjoyable. And the other one was the Battle of Minas Tirith. Obviously, Lord of the Rings. But I couldn't, mainly because I knew you'd have some kind of aneurysm again, and if I mentioned Lord of the Rings too much, so I kind of, for your own health, I left that one off. But there's so many great fight scenes in all 3 of them films. Not so much The Hobbit, but the original trilogy, superb.
Yeah, I was expecting a bit of Lord of the Rings action from you, to be honest. Matt, any honourable mentions, mate?
Yeah, a couple. We got the sauna scene from Eastern Promises. Viggo Mortensen. Basically, if you want a 3-minute, really gratuitously violent fight scene that is entirely dick swinging, and I mean that in the most literal sense, then Eastern Promises is the film for you. It's a fantastic fight scene, really, really just brutal aggression, and it's unrelenting as well. And not necessarily a scene so much as one of probably the only legitimate kung fu that's probably like in that world actually the ugly stepchild. But I really enjoyed the whole film Kung Fu Hustle, which is kind of a martial arts action comedy gangster kind of film that doesn't take itself very seriously but has actually very excellent fight scenes within it as well. Definitely worth a watch.
You mentioning Viggo Mortensen, then it just reminded me of History of Violence, the scene
yes.
in the diner. That's a really good scene. Yeah, that brings back some good memories. Great film. Tom, have you got anything left on your list to mention before your number one?
Oh, plenty, yeah. But no, don't worry. Well, first of all, I have to mention Velocipaster.
What a film. Brilliant.
I mean, when you're talking about iconic action sequences, there's nothing like a fella dressed in a dinosaur costume that, to be honest, I could probably make a better version of from household implements within arm's reach. Love it.
Brilliant
I
film.
mean, it was one of those films where I love watching a bad film. Battlefield Earth is just, I'm obsessed with it. I can't. There are days when I just can't stop thinking about it. But the thing is, I think with Velocipaster, I wouldn't say it's a bad film. I'd say it's a decent comedy film because I think they've done it all on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard an
And it's done
interview
well.
with the guy, and he very much knows what it is, and they worked to the limits that they could afford, and it works perfectly well for what it is.
Yeah. But anyway, jokes aside, I think one of my favourite ones, very, very, very short scene, but Superman 2, when he gets his powers back and goes back into the cafe
in there.
where he got roughed up, and he goes back and he teaches some people some manners. He absolutely lays it down, and then he just walks out of there like it was nothing. Just say, I've just been lifting weights.
Brilliant.
I love that moment. And then Kung Fu Hustle is just I remember when thinking about my top 5 for this pod, I remember a time when I essentially used to do my own compilation fight scene VHSs that I used to record. And I actually did, amongst all the serious ones, I did have some from Kung Fu Hustle. And I think how it approached it was brilliant. Again, another name drop from my boy, Yen Wu Ping. And it took a fresh approach that was lighthearted. And just how they dealt with, they kind of almost treated the training of different martial arts almost like it was a collectible. Like you collect a card, you learn the style, you get the power. And I think there's something that every nerdy completionist collector enjoys. So yeah, Kung Fu Hustle. And then I think I should probably stop there, otherwise I'll
be here all night.
On.
Brilliant. So number ones then. My number one probably isn't that surprising. It is the final scene from Empire Strikes Back. Luke gets his hand taken by Vader. The truth is revealed. Like, the actual physical fight between the two isn't the most hard-hitting. I like the visual of them fighting each other in quite a dark, lots of greys and blacks, but they're fighting each other with a bright sword. So you've got that cutting through the dark. I think that's a really nice visual. But the ramifications of this scene, it's like you see it across cinema, both like in sort of pop culture in a positive way, but also in a negative way when you look at parody stuff, shit like the guys from Scary Movies, the kind of stuff they do. It's affected everybody, this has. It has spawned a million tributes and a million parodies. There are very few scenes quite like this which have had this impact from cinema history. So not for the fight, but more for the everything else that it brought. It would be Empire Strikes Back, the Luke and Vader special. Stu?
Well, when mine was obvious as soon as Matt reminded us what the actual questions were. And top 5 fight scenes. It's not even a fight scene, but really it's an entire film. But when you think of a fight scene written and directed by a Welshman, you think of a bar brawl in Cardiff. But obviously it's not. It's the Raid/Redemption. Already mentioned by Tom, almost spoiled earlier on. Just breathtaking, just absolutely from start to finish. And it was one of them where it had got kind of traction on the underground. People were talking about it, and you need to see this film. It had already gone out of cinemas, and it hadn't come on DVD yet. So the only way to do it was to torrent it. But there was no subtitle version, so I watched it for the first time, having no idea what the fuck was going on. Obviously, you can kind of gather what's going on because it's pretty paint by numbers, level up to the end boss kind of situation, and it's just incredibly well done. And I didn't eat at all through the entire film, which is an achievement. No popcorn was taken. I just sat there from start to finish, just open mouthed in astonishment at what was going on, and then it just never ends. The second one is not as good for me. It's a bit more. It's more over the top, and it kind of knows what it is. But the first one was just perfect.
Brilliant choice, Matt.
From that, which to be fair could have been the top of my list completely. I think it was more knowing that one of you or Tom would have that movie. To be fair, I'm going for what almost kind of when you guys were discussing about what had impact on you when you were younger, but when Rocky finally wins the title from Apollo Creed in Rocky 2, obviously the fight scenes in the Rocky films aren't always the best, but this is the best of all of at least the original 5. And it's a culmination of kind of like two film or how many hours, kind of 3.5, 4 hours worth of struggle for this character where you really, really just want him to succeed. He's so downtrodden and so beaten, so the underdog, and he gets his chance again, and he's given absolutely zero chance to win. And it's just a classic underdog story, but it's actually the actual fight itself is tremendous, and it's one of those I think the power of it is because you just want him to win so much, and that's what makes it really, really powerful. And, knowing what he goes through in the film with Adrian, and then when he changes from going from being a southpaw to being a right-hand led boxer, and it's exhilarating, and it's not very often. I'm not a particularly happy person, generally speaking, and I was just overwhelmed with joy the first time I saw him win. And it just meant everything. It was just so, and it spawned its own things in history of obviously Adrian. I did it, and Mankind when he wins the title and he does that, he does that as well. It's what movies. It's what not films, because I've said before, films and movies are two different things completely. It's what movies should be. The end that fight scene in Rocky 2. It's the uplifting, happy ending that wraps it up nicely in a little neat bow and just gives you the payoff that you want. And he does it excellently.
Where do you think that specific fight ranks in like all boxing films, not just in the Rockies? Would you say it's up there? Because personally, I think of the ones I've seen, Raging Bull is probably my favourite of the visual aspects.
It's not tremendous from a much like Rocky 3's Thunderlips. It's the Hulk Hogan of boxing scenes, I guess. It's big, it's flashy, it's bombacious, but it's not technically fantastic. Do you know what I mean? It's Tom, you've boxed, or you've been in the ring in martial arts sense. I'm sure you'd agree it's not the most technically correct, but it is exciting all the same.
Yeah, it's one of those where, I mean, I could happily watch a 12-round fight where people are nowhere near knocking each other out and absolutely love it from the technique of what they're doing. It's like how some people enjoy watching a game of football, and even if there's no goal scored, they will appreciate the work that's been done. But there's a time and a place. It's the difference between I enjoy documentaries and I enjoy films, and there's just two different worlds with very two different objectives.
Mhm.
You know, it's all the films that I love. It's stereotypical. One guy attacks at a time, show off some fancy moves, and then on to the next one.
Mhm.
You know, with a bit of flying in between. So yeah, I think realism is good, and I think sometimes the right take on a realistic approach really gives it that cutting edge to push it above kind of the crowd. But yeah, it's the narrative behind it. It's almost to say, is a fight only as good as what's being fought for? And I think that's where it's probably difficult to say, go to someone with no familiarity with the film and say, watch this fight scene, it's brilliant. They probably won't feel the same way compared to
definitely
you
not.
watching the
Yeah,
entire film, because that fight scene is the culmination of everything. It's the peak of the conflict. It's what it's led to, because it takes a lot to lead to a fight.
Oh man, like everything from like the clothes, like from the robes, everything with Mickey and everything. Like what you got to remember, I used to own a Rocky bathrobe and would like shadow box around the house in my Rocky bathrobe, like because I just love those movies so much. Oh man,
I mean, the thing is, it's like, I think even if it's a world that you're familiar with, whenever I was in the gym, I could be knackered, but the second Hearts on Fire came on, I tell you what, I was moving like I've never moved before. I felt the absolute daddy. So it does, you know, everyone's got that fantasy in their head. Everyone wants to,
of course.
and that's what it's for, isn't it? That's why I love fight scenes, because in real life, fights are
they're crap, aren't they?
ugly, horrible things. You know, they never work out well. You know, they never work out as you anticipate. You know, I think we've all thrown a haymaker in Oceania, and it's not gone quite as we intended to. So, yeah, and that's the thing about this kind of these fantasies, is because these are the fight scenes that we have in our head after we've had an argument with someone, like with a bit of road rage or something. This is how we see it going down, but it never will.
Yeah, that's it.
Or if it does, it's not going to be you doing it. It's going to be the other chap that you really regret beeping your horn at.
Yeah. So, Tom, finish us off. Give us your number one, please.
Yeah, this is, as I've been going through my list, I've just seen this at the bottom, and I've just think, I can't wait to talk about this. It's my favourite by far, and just in doing preparation for this, I watched this probably about 4 times last night, back to back, because I just absolutely love it. And it's the rooftop scene in Jackie Chan's Who Am I? Which is, if you can get over a bit of dated, overacting, dodgy dubbing and production choices, is generally an all-round great action film in my book, and one of my favourites. It's got the great fight scenes. It's got, as you can imagine, phenomenal stunts. If you're into that kind of thing, it's even got some great driving sequences where a Mitsubishi Evo is just flying around Amsterdam and does some like insane handbrake turn into a parking bay. Police car drives past, and then they just pull out and drive in the other direction, as cool as anything. I'm not even a car person, and I enjoyed that. And along the same lines as Ong Bak has got some phenomenal. There's this one chase sequence where he's running away from a crowd of machete-armed thugs, and some of the stuff he does, jumping through barbed wires over cars. He does one thing where he slides backwards, doing the splits under a moving jeep, and it's just phenomenal. You know, Ong Bak, I think that's what picked it to become one of my favourite fight scene after all, because it's just the better action film as well. And Who Am I? This rooftop scene to paint a word picture, paint a picture with my word brush. He's in the baddies building. He's found the disc containing the plans, and he's running away and being chased by these 2 henchmen. They corner him on the roof, and it just has absolutely everything. I think I mentioned before that Jackie Chan was probably more known for his work in stunts rather than his kind of strict martial arts fighting chops. And in this, it shows off just how good he is at just a really good, violent fight scene. It's got a bit of humour as well. There are things where essentially the henchmen have a bit of a game with him. The one guy goes first, he says a time, and they've got to try and knock him down in that time, and they're having a competition who can do it quickest. And what I like as well is that you've got the one henchman who's like on the shorter side and is very much punchy, elbowy, close quarters fighting, and you've got the other guy who's this like lanky Dutch bloke who's very much kind of kicking and chucking his feet up from all sorts of angles. The kind that Amsterdam is lesser known for. And you've got the first guy going, he's fighting, and there's a part where Jackie Chan grabs his blazer. It's like they're both wearing really cool suits, or at least what were considered cool at the time. Grabs the blazer, pulls it over his head, ties the ends of it in a knot, and starts punching the hell out of the guy. And whilst that's going on, the other henchman who's timing it just kind of looks around and starts taking off his jacket. He's like, okay, cool. And then there's the next point, and the guy tries to get away, and Jackie Chan grabs his tie, and is using his tie kind of like, you know those toys where you'd have a ball on a string on a tennis racket?
Yeah.
And he just like bong, 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 bong. And it essentially got the end of this guy's tie in his hand, and is just back fisting him in the head, and he can't get away. And the second henchman sees that, and he just has a look around and starts taking his tie off. And just those little humorous touches that he's like, oh, bloody hell, mate, you're getting battered here. Right, jacket off, tie off. I'll learn from that. And there's a part where he's grabbed the first henchman's earring, and he's like spinning him around, and then he throws it. And then there's like a little bit of a gasp because he's just got like a really finely coiled piece of metal in his hand whilst the guy goes flying off. And he's like, oh, in like classical, like comical slapstick Channing. And then you've got the second henchman takes over, and yeah, teenage me thought he was the absolute don. He starts off by picking up his mate's jacket off the floor with his one foot and just doing like a standing split straight in the air. So essentially his legs are a straight line. And then he goes to just put on an absolute display of acrobatic kicking. It's phenomenal. And it's an illusion that was shattered for me because the actor who played this second henchman, I'm going to slaughter his name, is a chap called Ron Schmorenberg, and he was like a Dutch Taekwondo champion. And it just goes to show that you could be a great fighter, but that's not necessarily going to always translate when shooting a fight scene, because he couldn't, behind the scenes, he couldn't quite get the timings right, and it kept on just catching him wrong, and it didn't look right. And the fight scene's so good you almost don't notice that during the kind of heavier, busier aspects of it, he's shrunk by about half a foot. because Jackie Chan basically just gets one of his more familiar guys in his own team, some Australian chap, to stand in for him and do all the main bits of action. But it's still absolutely incredible. It's got it lasts for ages. There's peril, like involving them being on the rooftop. It just brings in so many things that I enjoy. Different styles, a bit of humour, a bit of good old proper terror violence. And yeah, that thrown into what I feel is just a really underrated all-round action film. It gets the top spot for me by some distance.
Excellent. Of all of the podcasts that we've done, I think this is the longest list of notes I've made on any of them for all the films I now want to watch. I'm quite impressed with your film knowledge and all of this, Tom. It's very impressive.
It's actually really nice to talk about this out loud because this is an interest I don't share with anyone at all. Like, no one that I know is this into either martial arts or specifically martial arts films. So it's wonderful to kind of relive a world that I was just obsessed with 15 years ago plus. 20 years ago. So it's been fantastic to just relive all of this.
Fantastic. Right, so that's our top fives done. Let us know what your top fives or just what fight scenes that you've enjoyed in any films. Obviously, you can get hold of us on the email, cagefightingpod@gmail.com, or on the Twitter @cagefightingpod. Next up, we are watching The Weatherman. I would say just check justwatch.com to see what streaming platform it is available to yourselves. We all fully recommend this film. We all enjoyed this one. So I'd say definitely check that one out if you get a chance. Please make sure that you're subscribed, and if you could leave us a review, we would thoroughly appreciate that. So for this week, Tom, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time this evening.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, guys. Look after yourself.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
I am you, Law. I am nobody's bitch.
Tom, would you like to say goodbye?
Bye.
It's goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.